847 women. 6 months of neurological analysis. Stanford University. The result? Researchers discovered there are exactly 3 evolutionary triggers that make the female brain enter obsession mode for a specific man. And before you think this is another modern theory, these same neurological patterns have been functioning for 200,000 years. Apparently, thousands of years of evolution created a very specific instruction manual in the female brain, and science has finally managed to map exactly how this works. Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to reveal the 3 triggers that Stanford identified, why they exist, and how they manifest in real life. We're talking neuroscience, not opinion. Data, not drama. If you want to understand the real science behind female behavior, subscribe now. Because what I'm about to reveal will connect dots you didn't even know existed. For men who prefer evidence over assumptions, this channel is for you. So, let's discover what 200,000 years of evolution programmed into the female brain. The study I'm presenting was conducted by Dr. Helen Fisher's team at Stanford, one of the world's leading authorities in neuroscience of attraction. Over 6 months, they analyzed 847 women across different ages, backgrounds, and cultures, using functional MRI to map real-time brain activity during various attraction scenarios. What makes this research groundbreaking isn't just the sample size, it's the methodology. Instead of relying on what women say they find attractive, researchers directly observed neurological responses. They measured actual brain chemistry, not conscious preferences. The results were so universally consistent that Stanford had to validate their findings against evolutionary psychology research from Harvard and UCLA. Harvard's 2022 study on dopamine pathways confirmed the neurochemical mechanisms. UCLA's research on ancestral mating strategies explained why these patterns survived 200,000 years of human evolution. Here's what's fascinating. These 3 triggers operate completely below conscious awareness. They're embedded in the limbic system, the same brain region responsible for survival instincts. This means women can be completely unaware that these triggers are influencing their attraction patterns. And here's the part that makes everything click into place. These triggers have nothing to do with modern dating advice. They're ancient survival mechanisms that worked when finding the right mate meant the difference between thriving and dying. The science is clear. The patterns are universal. And the implications, well, they explain why so much of what you've been told about attraction simply doesn't work. So what are these 3 evolutionary triggers that Stanford identified? Let me break down each one and explain the neuroscience behind why they work. Trigger number 1, scarcity signal. This isn't about playing hard to get. It's about genuine limited availability. When a woman's brain perceives that a high-value man has limited time, attention, or emotional investment to give, it activates what researchers call the scarcity response. The anterior cingulate cortex lights up like a Christmas tree, flooding the system with dopamine. Why? Because for 200,000 years, the most capable men were always in demand. They were leading hunts, making decisions, protecting the tribe. A man with unlimited availability signaled low tribal value. The female brain evolved to recognize this pattern instantly. Trigger number 2, status ambiguity. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. Women's brains don't respond most strongly to obvious high status. They respond to ambiguous status that requires investigation. When a man's social position isn't immediately clear, the female brain enters what neuroscientists call cognitive engagement mode. Stanford found that uncertainty about a man's status triggers the same neural pathways as puzzle solving. The brain literally becomes obsessed with figuring out where he fits in the social hierarchy. This creates a feedback loop of attention and interest that conscious decision-making can't override. Trigger number 3, protective capability. This isn't about physical strength, though that can be part of it. It's about demonstrating the ability to create safety and stability in an uncertain world. When a woman's brain detects protective capability, it activates the attachment system in the posterior cingulate cortex. Evolutionary psychology explains why. Females who chose mates with protective capability had offspring with higher survival rates. This selection pressure was so strong that modern women's brains still automatically assess every man's protective potential within seconds of meeting him. Now here's what's crucial, and this is where most men get it completely wrong. These three triggers work synergistically. They're not independent switches you can flip. They create a neurological cascade that can make a woman become genuinely obsessed with understanding and securing a particular man's attention. Shocking, I know. 200,000 years of evolution weren't canceled by modern dating apps. So how do these triggers actually show up in real life? Let me give you examples that you've probably witnessed, but never understood the science behind. Scarcity signal in action. You know that guy who's always busy with his business, his hobbies, his goals? Women constantly ask about his schedule, try to figure out when they can see him next. Meanwhile, the guy who's always available, always texting back immediately, always free for whatever she wants, the interest fades fast. It's not a coincidence, it's neuroscience. The female brain interprets unlimited availability as a survival red flag. If you have nothing else demanding your time and attention, the ancient programming asks, what's wrong with this man that no one else wants his resources? But here's what most men get wrong about scarcity. It's not about playing games or being artificially unavailable. Real scarcity comes from genuine purpose. When you're building a business, pursuing mastery in a skill, or deeply engaged in meaningful projects, your limited availability becomes authentic. The female brain can detect the difference between manufactured scarcity and genuine priority management. I've seen this play out countless times. The entrepreneur who genuinely can't text back for hours because he's in important meetings versus the guy who waits 3 hours to respond to look busy. One triggers attraction, the other triggers annoyance. The difference: authenticity versus manipulation. Status ambiguity in practice. Think about the guy who dresses well but doesn't flash money, has interesting hobbies but doesn't brag about achievements, shows competence but doesn't list his credentials. Women become genuinely curious about him. They ask friends about him, investigate his social media, create opportunities to learn more. Compare that to the guy who immediately tells everyone his job title, his income, his accomplishments. The mystery is solved. The brain moves on to other puzzles. Here's a specific example. I know a guy who's actually quite successful, owns multiple properties, runs a profitable business. But when women ask what he does, he just says, I solve problems for businesses. That's it. No details about revenue, no mention of his assets, no credentials listed. And women become fascinated trying to figure out exactly what that means and how successful he really is. The same man could say, I'm a business consultant with 7 years experience. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, and I have an MBA from Northwestern. All true, but it kills the mystery. The brain categorizes him and moves on. Status ambiguity works because the female brain evolved to assess potential mates over time, not in single interactions. Quick categorization meant potentially missing high-value partners who were humble about their capabilities. Protective capability examples. This isn't about being physically intimidating. It's about demonstrating that you can handle problems when they arise. The guy who stays calm under pressure, who makes decisions when others hesitate, who creates a sense of stability just by his presence. Women gravitate toward this energy without even realizing why. It could be as simple as how you handle a difficult waiter. Do you get flustered and apologetic? Or do you calmly address the issue and find a solution? How you navigate a stressful situation? Do you panic and look to others for direction? Or do you assess the situation and take appropriate action? How you respond when plans fall apart? Do you become frustrated and blame circumstances? Or do you adapt and create alternatives? The female brain is constantly running background assessments. Could this man handle real problems if they arose? Would I feel safer or more stressed with him during a crisis? I remember observing this at a dinner party where the host's oven broke right before serving the main course. Most of the men either stood around looking helpless or made jokes about ordering pizza. But one guy immediately started problem solving. checked if the neighbor's oven was available, calculated timing for alternative cooking methods, organized people to help implement the solution. Every woman at that party noticed him, even though he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just naturally demonstrated protective capability. Now here's what's fascinating, and this might sting a little. These triggers often work in ways that completely contradict modern dating advice. Being too accommodating kills scarcity. Being too transparent eliminates status ambiguity. Being too eager to please signals weak protective capability. The nice guy approach fails because it systematically deactivates all three evolutionary triggers. Unlimited availability, complete transparency about status and achievements, and constant accommodation instead of problem-solving leadership. If you've ever experienced a woman losing interest right when you thought you were doing everything right, being extra attentive, sharing your feelings openly, always agreeing with her preferences, there's your scientific explanation. You were following conscious-level advice while triggering ancient-level turnoffs. Here's another pattern you've probably noticed. Women often become more interested after seeing you interact confidently with other people, especially in challenging social situations. This isn't jealousy. It's all three triggers firing simultaneously. Your social confidence suggests scarcity. Others value your attention. Creates status ambiguity. She needs to reassess your social position, and demonstrates protective capability. You can handle social challenges. If this has happened to you, leave a like and tell me in the comments. Have you ever noticed a woman becoming more interested when you were genuinely busy with other priorities, or when she saw you handle a difficult situation with confidence? I want to know if you've observed these evolutionary triggers in your own experience. Describe the specific situation. I'm genuinely curious about how these patterns show up in real life. Here's what Stanford's research ultimately reveals. These three triggers don't work in isolation. They create what neuroscientists call a cascading attraction response when they operate together. Scarcity signal makes her brain pay attention. Status ambiguity makes her brain stay engaged. Protective capability makes her brain feel safe to invest emotionally. When all three are present, you get the neurochemical cocktail that creates genuine obsession. Dopamine for pursuit, norepinephrine for focus, and oxytocin for attachment. But here's the crucial part that most men miss. These triggers only work when they're authentic expressions of who you actually are. The female brain has evolved sophisticated detection systems for fake signals. Trying to manufacture scarcity, ambiguity, or protective capability without actually developing these qualities triggers different neural pathways, the ones associated with deception detection. This is why pickup techniques fail long-term. They might trigger initial interest, but the female brain eventually recognizes the incongruence between the signals and the reality. The real application of this research isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding why certain authentic behaviors create attraction while others kill it. When you are genuinely building something meaningful with your life, you naturally become scarce. When you're developing real competence, your status becomes intriguingly ambiguous. When you're actually capable of handling challenges, you naturally demonstrate protective capability. It's almost as if evolution designed a system where the most attractive men are the ones who are genuinely focused on becoming their best selves rather than chasing female attention. Imagine that. So the next time someone tells you that attraction is mysterious and unpredictable, you can smile knowing that Stanford University spent considerable resources proving that it's actually quite systematic. The female brain follows ancient programming that values exactly the qualities that made men successful for millennia. The science is clear. Women become obsessed with men who embody scarcity, status ambiguity, and protective capability, not because they consciously choose to, but because 200,000 years of evolution wired their brains to recognize these patterns as indicators of genetic and survival value. Next week, we're diving into equally fascinating territory. Why women lose interest when you reveal your feelings. MIT Neuroscience explains the emotional investment paradox. If you think this episode connected some dots, wait until you understand why emotional transparency often creates the opposite effect of what you'd expect. Make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started with the real science behind human attraction. Until then, remember, the data doesn't lie, even when everything else does.